Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're making a humble cable stitch sweater with a kiss of Alpine Stitch detail to draw just the right amount of attention. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new, plenty of subtly gorgeous modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 520 grams of yarn. That's 925 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you like wireless or wired headphones. I have switched over to wireless and I will never be going back. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 6 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows: chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, treble crochet, double treble crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this sweater started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain 9 for everyone, because we're all getting started with our cable stitch detail first. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our first row, which is a half double crochet row. So start off by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, we're all going to yarn over and insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook. We're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. That is our first half double crochet. Let's do one more. Yarn over into that following chain, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 3. Continue on with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Our row 1 is complete. Now we're going to get started on our following row, which is going to be a single crochet row. So from where we're at, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Our row 2 is now complete. Now we're all going to get started on our row 3, which is going to be our first cable stitch row. So let's all chain 2 and flip. So getting started with our cable stitch row, what we're going to do is start with a dividing stitch, which is a front post treble crochet. So we're all going to start with a yarn over of 2. Then from here, each of our cable stitch rows will be worked into our previous odd number row. So since we're working on our row 3, we're going to be inserting our hook into our row 1. So once when we have our yarn over of 2, we're going to be inserting our hook into the first half double crochet from our row 1, making sure that we are not counting that chain 2. So this is my first half double crochet right here. I'm going to bring my hook down underneath the body of that stitch and through the other side. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through to get 4 loops on our hook. Then from here, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. Now that is our first dividing stitch. Now we're going to get started on the actual cable stitch portion, and that's going to start with a set of 2 front post double treble crochets. So that's going to start with a yarn over of 1, 2, 3. Then taking a look at our row 1, we are going to skip the first 2 stitches. We're going to skip 1, skip 2, then put 1 front post double treble into the following 2 stitches. So like I said, skip that first available stitch, that second, and into that third, insert your hook underneath the body, yarn over, and pull through. Now we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, and from here we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. That is our first front post double treble crochet. We're going to be doing one more into that following stitch. So yarn over 3 times. Bring your hook down underneath the body of that stitch and through the other side. We're all going to yarn over and pull through. From here, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. Now, once we have these 2 stitches worked out, we're going to be doing another set of 2 front post double treble crochets, but now working into the 2 stitches that we just skipped over. So again, yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Taking a look at our row 1, finding that first skip stitch, we're going to bring our hook back and underneath the body of that first skip stitch, through the other side, and pull through. From here, again, yarn over and pull through 2 till we have 1 loop left on our hook. So yarn over, pull through 2, 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 then another front post double treble into that last skip stitch. So yarn over 3 times. Bring our hook back underneath the body of that skip stitch and through the other side and pull through. From here, yarn over and pull through 2 until we have a total of 1 loop left on our hook. Now that we have the crossover portion completed, we're then going to do a set of 2 front post treble crochets. So that's going to be similar to our dividing stitch. So yarn over twice. Into that next available stitch from our row 1, we're going to bring our hook down, underneath, through the other side, pull through. Then again, to have 4 loops on our hook, we're just going to yarn over, pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Underneath that following stitch with another front post treble crochet. So pull through 2, 2, and 2. Now that, not including our first dividing stitch, is the cable stitch detail completed. Now since we are framing off our cable stitch detail with a dividing stitch, we're going to do one more dividing stitch into that second to last stitch from our row 1. So yarn over twice. Bring our hook down underneath the body of that second to last stitch, pull through, then again, pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Then we are going to close off the row with 1 half double crochet into the top of that last stitch from our previous row, just to make sure that everything is secured down. Our row 3 is now completed. Now for this portion, every even number row is a single crochet row. So chain 1, flip our work, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 4. So our row 4 is complete. Now we're going to get started on our row 5, so chain 2 and flip. So getting started on our row 5. Like I said in one of our previous clips, every cable stitch row is going to be worked into our previous odd number row, which just so happens to be a cable stitch row. So we're going to get started with our dividing stitch, so yarn over twice. Now since we're working on row 5, we're going to be inserting our hook into our row 3. So finding that first stitch from our row 3, which is our dividing stitch, we're going to bring our hook down underneath the body of that stitch and through the other side, yarn over, pull through, and continue to pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook, and our dividing stitch is completed. Now getting started on the actual cable stitch portion. What we're going to do is start our cable stitch detail with 1 front post treble crochet into the first 2 stitches. So starting with a yarn over of 2, into that next available stitch from our row 3, bring our hook down, underneath and through the other side, pull through, and continue to pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. Now we did 1, we're going to be doing a second one, so yarn over twice. Underneath the body of that next stitch, through the other side, and pull through 2, 2, and 2. Now to do the crossover section for the cable stitch detail, we're all going to start with 2 front post double treble crochets. So yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Taking a look at our row 3, we're going to skip the following 2 stitches and then put 1 front post double treble into the following 2. So we're going to bring our hook down, like I said, skip 1, skip 2, into that next stitch, bring your hook underneath, through the other side with our first front post double treble. Remember, just yarn over and pull through 2 till we have 1 loop left on our hook. Another front post double treble underneath the following. So yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Underneath that following stitch, pull through 2, 2, 2, and 2 to get 1 loop left on our hook. Now from here, to do the crossover detail, we're going to be putting 1 front post double treble crochet into the 2 stitches that we just skipped over, but we need to work in through that window that we just made for ourselves. So we're going to start with a yarn over of 3 again, 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to hang on to our working yarn because it can very easily fall off. We're going to pull this down towards us, finding those 2 skip stitches in through that window. Here's my first, here's my second. Inserting your hook underneath that first skip stitch, so bring your hook back. Underneath that first skip stitch, we're going to pull through. Then again, per usual, pull through 2 until you have 1 loop left on our hook. Now that is our first crossover. We have just 1 more left to do. So again, yarn over 1, 2, 3 times. Hang on to your working yarn, pull our work down towards us, finding that second skip stitch. Bring your hook down underneath that stitch, pull through, and yarn over and pull through 2 until we have 1 loop left on our hook. And now our crossover is completed. Now we are going to do our dividing stitch. So yarn over twice, underneath the following stitch, which is our dividing stitch from our previous row, which is always going to be a front post treble crochet. Then to close off the row with 1 half double crochet into the top of that last stitch from our previous row. Now we've just completed our row 5. Our row 6 is going to be a single crochet row, so chain 1, flip our work, 1 single crochet into every stitch. We are back and we have just completed row 6. Now from here, we are going to repeat rows 3 through 6 until we get the height of the piece that we need. So we want to make sure that we're placing this first row at the bottom of where we like the sweater to be, but keeping in mind we are going to have a bottom band as well. Then just continue repeating rows 3 through 6. If y'all need any of those timestamps, they will be linked in the description until we're roughly 2 inches beneath the base of our neck. Then I will meet everyone back right after a cable stitch row, then we can fill in one of our front panels. Now, just to make sure that we have it down, as a really quick refresher, we're just going to get started on the following row. So since we just completed our row 6, we're now going to do a repeat of row 3 for our row 7. So we're going to chain 2 and flip, and we're always starting with our dividing stitch. So into the top of the first stitch from our previous odd number row, which is always our dividing stitch, we're going to yarn over twice and do our front post treble crochet. Then it is going to be a repeat of our row 3, so we're going to yarn over 3 times. We're going to skip the first 2 stitches and then into the next 2, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those. And once we have that, working back into those 2 skip stitches, 1 front post double treble crochet into each of those as well. Continue on with the rest of this cable stitch detail, and I'll meet you back once it is completed. We are back. I've just completed the height of my cable stitch detail. I have a total of 45 rows, and my height is roughly 14.5 inches or 37 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on our side panel. So we are going to switch out to our 6mm hook, and we're going to start with our right side panel, and we're going to start with a half double crochet row all the way down. So right after our last row, we're going to chain 2 and flip. We're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every side row, but into the first side row, we're going to insert with 2 because we're going to start working on the neck curve. So we should have all did our chain 2. Then into that first side row, we're going to insert with 2 half double crochets. So there's 1. Into that same side row, insert with a second half double. Now just 1 half double into the rest of our side rows. So yarn over into our following side row, which should be our single crochet row, find that top loop, insert with 1, following side row, which is this cable stitch row, insert with 1. We're going to continue on with our half doubles, making our way all the way down. We've just made our way down with our first half double crochet row. Now what we're going to do from here is a following half double crochet row within the back loops. So we're going to chain 2 and flip. So starting with a yarn over and inserting our hook into that first stitch's back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, pull through 3. Again, yarn over, next stitch's back loop, pull through 3, and that's it. From here, continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. So we are back. We have just completed our second row for our side panel. Now we're going to get started with our Alpine Stitch detail. So first thing we're going to want to do is place this last cable stitch row roughly 2 inches beneath the base of our neck because our collar is going to be roughly 2 inches. Then once when our cable's into place, we're going to insert our stitch marker into any stitch where we'd like the Alpine Stitch portion to start, making sure that it is an even numbered stitch. Now this is completely up to you. It could be higher, it could be lower. I inserted my stitch marker into the 4th stitch from the top, that's just about 1 inch, but keeping in mind we are still going to have more rows to fill in for the shoulder portion as well. Now what I did was I went from the corner of my underarm, moved up just about 1 inch, then just traced that over, then inserted my stitch marker into my stitch, which mine was the 4th stitch from the top, that's just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters from what we have right now. Now we're going to get started on our actual Alpine Stitch detail, so we're going to chain 2 and flip. So getting started, into that first stitch we're going to insert with 2 half double crochets. There's 1, into that same first stitch there's a second half double crochet. Then when it comes to doing our Alpine Stitch detail, it is going to alternate between a half double and a front post double. But our front post double is going to be worked into our previous odd number row. So since we're working on our row 3, we're going to be inserting our hook into our row 1, similarly to how we did our cable. So what we're going to do is find the second half double from our row 1. We're not going to insert our hook into that chain 2, because remember that's our turning chain, but we're also not going to insert into that first half double because this half double crochet increase that we just did is right on top of that stitch. So underneath the second half double crochet, we're going to yarn over once, bring our hook underneath, through the other side, and pull through. Now when we have these 3 loops on our hook, we're all going to want to pull up nice and tall to get the same height as our half double crochet increase, then yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Then from here we're going to alternate between 1 half double, 1 front post double until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. So I have just 2 more stitches left to do. Let's do that again. Starting with the yarn over. We are going to skip 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as that stitch. Then we're going to half double crochet into that next. So pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Then I have just 1 more stitch left to do before I'm worked into my stitch marker stitch. So yarn over, into that next stitch. We're not going to be working into that next available stitch because that half double crochet is on top of that stitch. So underneath that next, another front post double. So we're going to yarn over, pull through, pull up nice and tall, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now we are worked into that stitch marker stitch. So I'm going to be reinserting my stitch marker into the top of the stitch just so I know where my Alpine Stitch detail starts and ends. Now from here we're going to continue on with back loop half double crochets to reach the end of the row. So starting with the yarn over, we are going to skip that following stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as that stitch. So starting into the next, insert with 1 back loop half double and continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Now since we started this row off with an increase, we should have 1 more stitch than our previous row. But at the end of this row, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half into every stitch, making our way all the way up to the top, making sure we're inserting our stitch marker into the same stitch. Then I will meet you back. So we are back and we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows completed for our side panel. Now we're going to get started on our 5th. So we're going to chain 2 and flip. Now the Alpine Stitch detail will be done exactly the same way as our previous row. So starting with an increase of 2 half double crochets, we're all going to yarn over into that first stitch with an increase of 2 half double crochets. Then since we're working on row 5, we're going to be inserting our hook into our row 3. Now as a quick tip, when it comes to doing our Alpine Stitch detail, our stitches will be staggered. So our front post double crochet will be worked into our previous Alpine Stitch row's half double. Then our half double crochets will be worked on top of our front post doubles. So our next stitch is going to be a front post double. So taking a look at our row 3, the first 2 stitches is an increase of 2 half doubles. We're going to be inserting our front post double crochet into that second half double crochet from that increase. So yarn over once. Underneath the body of that half double crochet, we're going to pull through. Then don't forget, pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2. Then 1 half double, 1 front post double until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. So let's do the next set of stitches together. Yarn over, preparing for a half double. We're going to skip that following stitch because that front post double counts as that stitch. So into the next, we're going to insert with a half double. Then to do our front post double, yarn over once. Into our previous Alpine Stitch section's half double crochet, we're going to bring our hook down, underneath, pull through, pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2. From here, continue to repeat a half double and front post double until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Everyone's last stitch should be just 1 half double crochet into that stitch marker stitch, like how mine is right here. Don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch all the way back up. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed our first 6 rows for our neckline. What we're going to do from here is continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until we get the width of the neckline that we need. So how we're going to figure that out is making sure that we're placing our cable stitch detail at mid chest. Then, like I said, continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until this last row that we have right here is roughly 2 inches past the side of the base of our neck, because we are going to have that 2-inch collar. Now I will meet everyone back right after an even numbered row, so that we'll be along the top, right when we're about to get started on a repeat of row 3. And once we have that, I will meet everyone back. But right after my first 6 rows, I'm actually pretty much completed with this neckline portion. So just my 6 rows is about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters, or my total width is now 4.5 or 12 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on our following row, which is going to be the shoulder portion. So from where we're at, we're going to place this last cable stitch row 2 inches beneath the base of our neck, then make an even numbered chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. Now I went ahead and already did mine. I needed roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 12. Then we're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every chain. So once we have our chain, block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then yarn over, and into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, insert with our first half double crochet, then continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Then I'll meet you back once we're about to work into the body portion. So we've just made our way down our chain with our half doubles. Now to finish up this Alpine Stitch detail, we're going to repeat our previous row's Alpine Stitch detail. So into that first available stitch into the body, we're still going to do an increase. So into that stitch with 1, same first stitch with a second. Then, just like how we would normally do, we're going to yarn over into the second half double crochet from our previous Alpine Stitch section's increase, inserting with a front post double, then continue on with our half double, front post double until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Now this Alpine Stitch detail is complete. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then at the end of that row, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of our second shoulder row. We have just completed our first 2 shoulder rows. Now we're going to get started on our third. Now we're going to start with our Alpine Stitch detail, and it's going to start the same for everyone, so chain 2 and flip. And we're all going to start with a half double crochet. So yarn over into that first stitch with a half double. Then we're going to do a front post double into our first shoulder row. So yarn over. We are going to skip that first half double from our first shoulder row because that half double is directly on top of that one. So underneath the second half double crochet, we're going to pull through. Pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2. So everything is per usual. We're just going to continue on with our half double front post double until we have done the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a total chain 12. So I'll meet you back after I have a total of 12 Alpine stitches. So we are back. I have just completed my Alpine Stitch detail until I had the same amount of stitches as chains that we made, so I have a total of 12 stitches. Now we're going to continue on with the same Alpine Stitch detail per usual, but now we're just going to be working into our previous Alpine Stitch row because we didn't have a previous Alpine Stitch row to work into for the first row of the shoulder. So everyone's last stitch should have been a front post double. What we're going to do is 1 half double crochet into that next stitch, then a front post double, just working into that second half double crochet from our previous Alpine Stitch detail. So this is my increase. We aren't going to be working into that first because that half double counts as that stitch. So underneath the body of that next half double, insert with a front post double. Then everything else is per usual. Into that next stitch with a half double, then a front post double, and just continue on with our Alpine Stitch detail until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Now that we've worked into our stitch marker stitch, 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch again, then I'll meet you back. We are back. We have just completed our 4th shoulder row. Now we're going to do our 5th, which is our following Alpine Stitch row. So chain 2 and flip. Now for the shoulder portion, we aren't doing any increases or decreases for the Alpine Stitch detail, but it is going to be done roughly the same way as our other Alpine Stitch details, so our stitches are still going to be staggered. So since the first stitch from our previous Alpine Stitch detail was a half double crochet, we're going to insert into there with a front post double. From here, yarn over, skip 1 stitch from our previous row, and half double crochet into the next, then continue with our Alpine stitches until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. We've done our Alpine Stitch detail till we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Now, just like our previous rows, 1 back loop half into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch, make our way all the way up. And from here, we're just going to continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until this reaches the tip of our shoulder. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an Alpine Stitch row. So we are back. The entirety of my side panel is complete. Now I have a total of 17 rows, and my width is just about 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters, or my total width is 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on the other side panel. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're then going to insert our 6mm hook into the bottom corner stitch of our cable stitch detail. Then we're going to do our half double crochet row. So just like how we did the first half double crochet row on the other side, we are going to put 1 half double crochet into every side row, but we did do an increase into the top side row on the other side. So we're going to put 1 half double crochet into every side row, then an increase of 2 half double into the last side row. So we did do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just want the height. Then from here, yarn over, into our first side row, insert, starting with 1 half double crochet. Into our following side row, find that top loop and insert with another half double. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every side row, except for into the last one. Into that last one, we're all going to do 2 half double crochets. That'll meet you back at the end of the row. We've just made our way up with our left side panel's first half double crochet row. We did make sure that we put 2 half double crochets into that last side row. Now our following row is just going to be a back loop half double crochet row. So we're going to chain 2, flip our work. 1 back loop half in every stitch, then I'll meet you back to get started on row 3. So we are back. Our first 2 rows are completed. Now from here we're going to get started on the neckline portion and the Alpine Stitch detail. So we're all going to want to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that we inserted into for this side. I inserted my stitch marker into the 4th stitch on this side, so I'm going to insert it into the 4th stitch from the top on this side. Now we should all be along the bottom, so chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. Now what we're going to do from here is we're going to start with our front post double crochet. So we're going to take our stitch marker out for now, and we're going to find that next stitch, which is the stitch that the stitch marker was in. Then we're going to trace that down and do our front post double crochet. So just like before, pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2, then half double crochet, so yarn over, skip 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as that stitch, then into that next, insert with a half double. From here, we're going to repeat our front post double, half double, until we all have 1 stitch left, and I'm actually right there. I have 2 stitches left. So I'm going to do my following front post double. Now the last stitch in this row for everyone should be a half double crochet, but just like on this other side, we are going to do an increase along the top. So into that last available stitch, we're going to insert with 1, same stitch with a second. And now our first Alpine Stitch row is completed, or our row 3. Now from here, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Oh, we want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into that first front post double crochet. Then from here, we can do our following row, which is our back loop half double crochet row. We want to make sure that we're bringing our stitch marker into the following row with us. Then once we have that following row completed, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and then work our way back up with back loop half double crochets until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back so we can do our next Alpine Stitch detail together. We are back and we are nearly finished with our first 5 rows. We have done our back loop halves all the way up until we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. Now we're going to do our Alpine Stitch detail together. So what we're going to do is half double crochet into that stitch marker stitch, because remember our stitches need to be staggered from our previous Alpine Stitch detail. So I'm going to insert in through there, starting with 1 half double crochet. Don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then from here, continue on with our normal half double front post double till we all have 1 stitch left so we can increase together once more. So we have made our way down, leaving that last stitch. Now we're all going to do an increase of 2 half double crochets, just like that. And now from here, we're finished with our row 5. Our row 6 is a half double crochet row, so chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, remembering to insert our stitch marker into the same stitch. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back. We have just completed the first 6 rows of our left front panel. Now what we're going to do from here is continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until we have the same amount of neckline rows as we have on the right side. Once we have the same amount of rows, we will all end along the bottom. Then we can get started on the shoulder portion together. Now after the 6 rows that we just did together, I am actually completed with my neckline portion. So from here, we are all going to get started with our shoulder portion together. So since we all ended along the bottom, I'm going to pull my hook out, but leave some slack because we don't have to cut. I'm going to insert my hook into the top corner stitch of my neckline, then simply make a chain for the same amount of chains that we made on this side. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 12. So on this side, I'm going to take the tail end of my yarn, make a chain 12, and cut. So now that we have our chain and we did do a cut, what we're going to do from here is reinsert my hook into our tail end. Again, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. So we're making our way up with our first shoulder row. We put 1 back loop half into every stitch until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. Then from here, we're just going to do the Alpine Stitch row the same way that we normally would do. So just to talk you guys through it, this next row is going to start with a front post double because that first stitch from our previous Alpine Stitch detail was a half double. So front post double into there, half double, making our way down. Into that last stitch, just like our previous rows, it's still going to be an increase of 2 half doubles. Then I'll meet you back once we're worked into that last stitch, and then we can work into the chain together. Our first shoulder row is nearly completed. We have just finished up our Alpine Stitch detail, making sure that we did do that increase into that last stitch the same way that we did for the neckline rows. Then from here, just put 1 half double crochet into every chain. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then, just to do the Alpine Stitch together again, at the end of our second shoulder row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, and I'll meet everyone back when we're worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. So our second shoulder row is complete, and we're nearly done with our third. And now we're just going to do our Alpine Stitch detail per usual. So into my stitch marker stitch, I'm going to do a half double crochet because the first stitch from our previous Alpine Stitch detail was a front post double. So I'm going to insert with a regular half double. Don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. 1 front post double, 1 half double, 1 front post double, and from here we're just going to continue on with our normal Alpine Stitch detail all the way to the end. So we have just completed our third shoulder row. Now we're going to do our fourth, which is just back loop half doubles, Then we're going to do our 5th as well. So at the end of that row, chain 2, flip our work. 1 back loop half into every stitch, and I'll meet you back when I worked into the stitch before our stitch marker stitch. So we've just made our way up with our half double crochets. Now we're going to do our Alpine stitch detail. So what we're going to do is our first stitch, which is going to be a front post double because the first stitch from our previous Alpine stitch detail was a half double. Then just continue on with our front post double, half double, all the way down. Now at the end of this row, our last stitch is going to be a front post double, but because we want that to be secured down, we are going to do that last stitch, which is a front post double, but combined with a half double. Make your way down. When we have 1 stitch left, I'll meet you back to do that last stitch together. So we've made our way down, and our last stitch is going to be a front post double, but will be combined with a half double. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into the last stitch from our previous Alpine stitch row and pull through. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, we're still going to pull up tall and yarn over, pull through 2. When we have these 2 loops on our hook, we're all going to yarn over, then insert our hook into the last stitch from our previous row. So bring our hook down into that last stitch, pull through. Once we have these 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, and that's how we're going to do our last stitch whenever it's a front post double crochet. Our following row is a back loop half double crochet row, so chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half into every stitch. So we are back. We have just completed our half double crochet row. Now what we're going to do from here is just continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as shoulder rows on this side. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed the entirety of our front panel. Now from here, we're all going to get started with our back panel. So first things first, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last row. Now it should be the same on both sides, and for those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 61 stitches. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 61 with my 6mm hook. But I actually already have my back panel completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. So now that we have our chain for the back panel, what we're going to do is block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet. Then insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, with a half double crochet. And from here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. We've made our way down with our first row. Now from here, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, insert with a half double, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue with 1 back loop half double into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch again. And all we're going to do is continue on with our back loop half double crochet rows for the same amount of rows that we have for the side panels, plus an additional 3. That 3 will make up that width for our cable. So for those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 17 rows for one side panel. So 17 plus 3 is 37. So I'm just going to continue on with 37 back loop half double crochet rows, no increases, no decreases. It should come out to roughly the same width as the front panel. Then once we have this completed, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam the shoulders together. So now that we have both our front and our back panel completed, we're ready to seam up the shoulders. So first things first, we're going to place our work on top of each other, making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out so all the detail is along the inside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We are going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row, working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert. First side row into the back panel, insert with 1 single crochet. Again, this is my following side row, so find that top loop, insert. Following side row within the back panel, insert, and single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue on with our single crochet seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up the shoulders. Now we're going to get started on the collar. So we're going to start by making sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up, then insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along our neckline. Then all we're going to do is 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then once we reach our few side rows that we have, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into each of those. So since I inserted my stitch marker into my side seam right here, I'm going to start with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then I will meet you guys back once I reach my first few side rows right here. So we've made our way down with our single crochets. Now we reached our first few side rows. Now all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. Then finding our next side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets, so there's 1, into that same top loop with a second. And we're just going to continue this, making our way all the way around, so let's do it again. Into our following side row, this is mine, find that top loop, insert with 1, following side row, find that top loop and insert with 2. Continue doing this. Once we reach our stitches along the top of our cable, just 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then same, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row along the back as well. Go ahead and make your way all the way around. Once we've slip stitched into that chain space, try your piece on, making sure that the single crochet row isn't too tight, because this is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. If it is a little too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, you do some stitches with a tighter grip. So now that we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, and we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're now going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 7. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next chain, yarn over, and gently pull through. We do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following rows will be too tight to work into. Continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So finding that next available stitch, we're going to insert in through there with a slip stitch. That slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Then from here, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding that last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that back loop with a slip stitch, remembering not to tug too tightly, and continue with 1 back loop slip into every stitch. At the end of the row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip into every stitch again. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. So we are back, and we have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we did our previous rows, then repeat. So just finding that next available stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base. Does not count as a stitch, flip our work, and repeat. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it together. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, and we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam everything together. So this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're then going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Then we're going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through everything on our hook, and that's it. Continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut. So we are back, our collar is all seamed up. Now we're ready to seam up the sides. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is slipped wrong side out so that we're looking at the inside of our piece. Then what we're going to do is insert our stitch marker into any stitch that is in multiples of 3 from the top for the width that we'd like for the sleeve to be. Now I'd like for my sleeve to be just about 7 inches or 18 centimeters, so I've inserted my stitch marker into the 27th stitch from the top. Then from here, insert your hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then just do a single crochet seam till we reach our stitch marker. So just into that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet around everything. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single crochet around everything. We're going to continue doing this until we reach our stitch marker. Once we have, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming everything together, and now we're going to get started on the sleeve. But right before we get started on the length, we're all going to want to insert our stitch marker into the stitches that we have on both sides of our shoulder seam. Now we should have the same amount of stitches on both sides, and once we have that completed, just so we know where the middle is going to be, we can now get started on the length of our sleeve. So we're going to start by inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within our armhole. Then we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be. I'd like for mine to be a long sleeve, which is roughly 17.5 inches or 45 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 65. Once we have our chain, we're all going to do a half double crochet row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. That's our turning chain. Then from here, put 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. So we've made our way down with our row 1, leaving that last chain. Now into that last chain, all we're going to do is an increase of 2 half doubles, so there's 1, into that same last chain with a second half double. Now our row 1 is complete. We're going to connect it into the base. So connecting it into the base, we're all going to start by counting up the next 2 available stitches, so there's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, we do need to work our way up to the following row, so slip stitch into that following stitch, into the base, flip our work, start the row with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles, so yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches, insert with a increase of 2 back loop halves, then complete the row with 1 back loop half into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch again, closing off the row with an increase of 2 back loop halves, the same way that we did our previous row. Then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. So we are back and we have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it back into the base. So what we're going to do is, just like our previous rows, count up 1, count up 2. Into that second stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and repeat these 2 previous rows until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Once we are, I will meet everyone back so we can do the decrease side of our sleeve. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way up until we're worked into our first stitch marker stitch. Now we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we did here, but instead of increases, we're going to do decreases. So for those of you that have ended along the outer edge like me, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches. For those of you that have ended along the base, what you guys are going to do is work your way up to the following row. Everything is per usual. Flip your work, then I'll meet you back in the following clip to show you how we're going to do our decrease of 2 back loop half doubles. We've made our way all the way up, leaving the last 2 stitches, and how we're going to do our decrease is yarn over, into that following back loop, pull through, next stitch is back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. That's how we do our decrease. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. So counting up the next 2 available stitches, we're going to slip stitch into there. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and now we're going to start the row off with a decrease. So finding that first stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch is back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. That is our decrease. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet everyone back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. the decreased side of our sleeve is completed. Now we're going to seam it all up together. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as the side seam. So I went ahead and already got mine done. So I'm just going to talk you guys through it. This single crochet seam is going to start with us flipping our work wrong side out. Then we're going to do our same single crochet seam. Then when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up 1 and cut. Then we can get started on our cuff. So getting started on the cuff, we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seam's on the inside. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of our side rows. Then do a single crochet row, putting 1 single crochet into every side row. We're all going to do a chain up of 1 just to secure it. Then, finding our first side row, we're going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. Find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet again, and that's it. Continue with 1 single crochet into every side row. Then I'll meet you back right after we slip stitch into that chain space. So we are back. Our single crochet row is completed. Now from here, we're all going to do our cuff, which is going to be done exactly the same way as the collar. So just to talk you guys through it, right after we slip stitch into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain, the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 12, then do our exact same back loop slip stitch rows, no increases, no decreases, till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet everyone back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We have just completed doing our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to do our same exact outside loop slip stitch seam that we did for the collar. So just to talk y'all through it, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Do our exact same outside loop slip stitch seam so we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat everything we did here on the other side. So now we're ready to get started on our bottom band. What we're going to do is start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece, and we're going to single crochet around everything. So just like for the cuff, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row and 1 single crochet into every stitch. Now this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch as well, so make sure it fits. If it's too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. Our single crochet row along the bottom of our piece is completed. Now from here, we're going to do our bottom band, which is going to be done exactly the same way as our collar and our cuff. So we're going to slip stitch into that chain space, make a chain the length that we'd like for our bottom band to be, which for me, I'd like for mine to be roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 12, then do our back loop slip stitch rows all the way around. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it up, and it is going to be done exactly the same way as our cuff and our collar. So another outside loop slip stitch seam. Go ahead and get that completed. When we don't have any more stitches left, do a chain up 1 and cut, then we are all done. And once we have that completed, we are all done. Last thing we have to do is weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch y'all on the next one. Bye.